Welcome to the Locked On Heat 2006 NBA Finals rewatch. We're going to go back to Game 5 today, an overtime thriller that saw Dwyane Wade establish himself as one of the all-time greats, even at that early age. Maybe it's a big statement, but we'll tell you why and hear from Coach Erik Spoelstra. All of that and more coming up next.
Terry puts it up, won't go, rebound Wade. The Miami Heat, they've done it. They win their first championship in franchise history.
Congratulations, Miami Heat, 2006 NBA champions.
But it was our time. I really believe that it was our time.
It's one of the best feelings I ever had in my life, so I'm going to live it up, so we deserve it.
All right, welcome to our sixth installment of the Locked On Heat 2006 NBA Finals rewatch. Thank you so much for subscribing on YouTube, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Goldberg here with David Ramil. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We just rewatched Game 5, and there's a lot to get into in what would end up being probably the signature game of the series. We're also going to hear from Erik Spoelstra later on. But David, I'm interested to hear how you're going to set the stage for us here, because this game was a little different than I remembered it.
Yeah, if there was a theme to Game 5, it's a simple one: desperation. With a series tied 2 games apiece, both the Heat and Mavericks attacked the game knowing exactly what was at stake, a chance to continue building momentum for Miami or for Dallas to regain it before going back home for the last 2 games of the series. Head coach Avery Johnson tried changing things up to no avail, taking his team out of a downtown Miami hotel and taking them 30 minutes north to Fort Lauderdale. Too many distractions, Johnson explained. But the move felt like a man trying anything to get his team going, making things more challenging. The Mavericks would be without their sixth man, Jerry Stackhouse, after a flagrant foul on Shaquille O'Neal in Game 4 resulted in a 1-game suspension. Perhaps the pressure got to Dwyane Wade too, at least at first. His shooting struggled early on, although he made his presence felt by drawing trips to the line seemingly at will. But his teammates, what some would label his supporting cast by this point, rose to the challenge. Shaquille O'Neal with one last bounce in his step, grabbing every rebound he could, forcing opposing centers into foul trouble. James Posey was maniacal on defense everywhere at once, switching constantly or drawing charges at key moments. But the Mavericks wouldn't give up easily, led by Jason Terry and Josh Howard, closing out the second quarter on a 21-9 run that put Dallas up 8. Howard rolled his ankle and was diagnosed with a strained right hamstring at halftime, but still had 25 points in the game. Dallas was extra sharp despite missing Stackhouse, but as the third quarter drew to a close, ABC announcer Mike Breen called it Dwyane Wade time. The expectation that Wade would rise to the challenge despite shooting 3 of 15 up to that point. And Breen was right, as Wade hit one jumper and then another, followed by a Posey three-pointer to cut the lead to 1. The fourth quarter was Wade at his absolute best. He scored 17 points, 5 of 8 from the floor, and a perfect 7 of 7 from the line. No shot bigger than his final jumper to tie the game at 93 with just seconds left to send the game into overtime. In OT, Miami flashed their defensive chops, holding the Mavs to just 25% shooting. And yet the Heat were still down 1 after a Nowitzki jumper, and the game and likely Miami season now in Wade's hand. He drew a foul with 1.9 seconds left, draining his first as icy as ever. Then a crucial mistake by Josh Howard, calling for a timeout in between free throws, Dallas's last of the game. Whether Wade missed or made his second free throw, the Mavericks wouldn't be able to inbound the ball from their own half court. Chaos ensued as Mavs coaches challenged referees. Eventually, Wade calmly sank his second to seal the game, a closer if ever there ever was one. A Devin Harris jumper missed everything from half court, and Miami was going back to Dallas, a very different team, a better one for sure, and now just 1 game away from the unlikeliest of comebacks.
Dwyane Wade, as soon as that Devin Harris half court, he falls to the court. Dwyane Wade just fist pumping in the face of right in front of the cameras that are sort of swarming the court. Once the buzzer sounds there, it was so triumphant, and that to me is the image, right? And there's so many things that we can get into with Dwyane Wade's performance there. I mean, you mentioned just D Wade scoring 25 points over the final 18 and a half minutes after being down 8 points with a minute and a half to go in the third quarter. Scored 25 points from there on to seal the win. And I remember this being a legendary Dwyane Wade performance. And really it is, but I kind of went into it thinking it was more of a masterpiece than it was a legendary performance. And this was not a masterpiece. It was a little dirty. It was a little kind of rough around the edges, this performance. It didn't start well with him. The jumper wasn't falling early on. I know we'll get into sort of our flashbulb moment later on and sort of what established. And there's one jumper that I want to single out in particular, but this was far from a masterpiece. This was sort of just, oh, he willed this one, right? And one of the things that we talked about in Game 4, and my big takeaway was, hey, this is the first game where I thought Miami looked like, from buzzer to buzzer, the better team than Dallas.
Yep.
Not that that was their first win, but the first time where I felt like they were very much in control the entire game. Not the case in this game. I got the game chart here from NBA.com from back in 2006. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see it. And if you're just listening to the podcast, basically, the Mavericks led 80% of this game for the most part, and a lot of, and from probably 98% of that second half, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Dwyane Wade just muscled their way into this win. We actually had a really great opportunity to ask Erik Spoelstra about this over the phone, and just to sort of recall Erik Spoelstra, of course, an assistant coach under Pat Riley on the bench during this game. Here's what he had to say.
Just what do you remember about that finals and maybe, 16 years later, I guess now, how Dwyane Wade's performance aged?
I mean, it's up there with any of the all-time great performances in a finals series, and in specific that led to a championship. I think looking back on it now that, we've seen and been a part of a lot of great teams, what stands out the most to me, looking back on it, was how young Dwyane was, and was having an historic performance. That usually happens with guys in their physical, emotional, and mental prime of their careers, which usually is somewhere in the ballpark of 30 years old, where they've had enough requisite experience, pain, perspective, gratification, all the understanding the highs and lows, understanding how to really influence others to be able to achieve a bigger goal, where it's not just about the individual, where you're trying to make your own mark, which is natural for any young player coming through the league. But his I guess his world-class clutch performance, it just belied his actual age and experience. As he's doing it, you just felt like he was a 10-year vet. And then when I'm looking back on it now, you just realize that that's so rare, for a young player to have that kind of impact on a franchise and in the biggest moments on the biggest stage that this league can provide, and to do it with and to be able to produce like he did, I just think is incredibly remarkable.
It's a great excerpt from Erik Spoelstra. Again, really happy that he was able to jump on the phone and talk about it. But when he talks about Dwyane Wade being so young and being up for that moment, I just think about the fact that, like I said, the jumper just wasn't falling for basically 3.5 quarters. It just wasn't going in. And yet he takes 25 free throws in that game. He realizes, hey, like, this jumper is just not happening. I'm not able to get to the basket the way that I want to either, because they're double teaming me, triple teaming me. They've got Devin Harris face guarding me half the game, that I just can't get to my spots. But I'm just going to put my head down and just run into contact. And he ends up taking 25 free throws in that game. He says, nothing else is working. Let me just get to the line. I know we're going to talk about free throws for the rest of the show. It's going to be a common theme of it. But the fact that he decided to have that veteran savvy, to know that all this stuff wasn't working, and he's just going to get to the line more than ever. He's going to pump fake more than he ever did. He's going to just fake out the Mavericks defense more than he ever had. And then at the end, the free throws you talk about at the end of overtime there, in between the around the Josh Howard timeout, the fact that he wanted those and then sank them despite all the madness that was happening to win the game, it really does sort of reflect what Spo was saying.
Absolutely. I think it just also kind of underscores not just his youth in terms of, his maturity in dealing with the clutch situation and the pressure of the moment and everything else, but also something that I've been kind of talking about is just in watching him, it's so clear that he's at a completely different level than everybody else on the floor in terms of just sheer athleticism. Like nobody can keep pace with him. And that's something that's really stood out to me is, obviously years later, everybody, especially the Dallas side of things, complains about the egregious free throw calls and everything else like that. I didn't see anything that was egregious. Like he's just bullying his way past everybody and drawing contact. At no point in time did I see flopping. This wasn't Harden-esque. This wasn't even like there were moments there where Devin Harris and Josh Howard kind of sold contact to a higher degree than was necessary. But that wasn't Wade. He wasn't flopping. He was just they couldn't keep their hands off of him in terms of he just was everywhere all at once. He was just attacking them mercilessly, and they had no response for him. You could put Harris on him or Adrian Griffin. It didn't matter. You could put Howard or anybody bigger, and he was going to find a way to blow past them in order to get to the basket. And whether he was hitting his shots or not, he was still making an impact. But then, yes, eventually to find that stroke, to be able to hit those shots in such clutch moments. Go ahead.
The free throws point is a really good one too, because I'm with you. I'm watching these games and I'm waiting for like the egregious flopping, that James Harden level baiting of the contact, and it's not like that. And look, not every. I know that Dwyane Wade was a huge influence on people like James Harden and things like that, where hey, like I'm just gonna get to the line a bunch and I'm gonna accumulate a lot of points in that way. But the way that Dwyane Wade did it didn't strike me as cheating the game. And I remember talking to Steve Kerr about this. It was more in regards to the baiting beyond the three-point line and trying to get those three free throws. Remember, like that was sort of a thing that was happening in the league a couple of years ago.
Goran Dragic was a big beneficiary of it. Yeah.
He was very good at it. Talking to Steve Kerr about it, and one of the things he kept saying is like, look, it just doesn't feel like basketball. It just feels like cheating the game. In this instance, it didn't feel like cheating the game with Dwyane Wade. It felt like a strategic move, again, because for most of that game, the jumper wasn't falling. It's the NBA Finals. It's do or die. Use the word desperation. I thought it was a really good word to describe what was going on here. You do whatever you have to win this game. And here Dwyane Wade had to get to the line 25 times and put his body on the line there. I've got some really interesting trivia questions. So we're going to save that here for after the break. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here with our 2006 NBA Finals rewatch. We heard from Erik Spoelstra about Game 5. We are revisiting Game 5. We set the stage here. It's time to get into some trivia, and let's
do it.
Pretty much all free throw related.
All right.
Which one do I want to start with? Okay. A little bit of a trick question here to start. I'm just giving you a warning. All right, here's the question. The Heat took 49 free throw attempts in this game. That's a lot. 49.
It is.
Since then, how many teams have taken that many free throws in an NBA Finals game?
Oh.
Since 2006.
Just for at least one game during the NBA Finals at one point?
Yes.
2?
0.
Nice.
Not a single one. So I was looking at this on StatMuse and just how rare 49 is so many.
It is.
It's so many.
But it's a confluence of like two of the best players that are able to draw fouls. Like we haven't seen this from that and Shaquille O'Neal too. Still even at this point, like just getting fouled mercilessly by Jop. DJ Mbenga making an appearance, like everybody was just fouling. Like he looked noticeably sharper than he had during the first 4 games of the series. Like he was impactful in Game 4, but I think in Game 5 it might have been his most explosive, if you can even call it that at that point in his career. But he was still able to just draw contact from already dunking late in a game, something we definitely hadn't seen. It looked like he had been slowed down by injury or age or a combination of both, but he certainly had it dialed up for Game 5.
Well, a lot of hack-a-shack in the fourth quarter and overtime too obviously contributed to a lot of these free throws. I was going back and looking again through the records here, and it had like 50 and 60 free throws a game in the finals was pretty common in the 50s and 60s. So that must have been like a really kind of sucky time to watch basketball. But Yeah, 49 had not been done. So that was a little bit of a trick. It was 0. All right, here's another one.
All right.
Dwyane Wade attempted 250 free throws throughout the entire 2006 postseason. Who is the only player to ever attempt more free throws in a postseason?
In a postseason?
Ever.
Oh, wow. I mean, O'Neal feels like an easy answer, too.
That's it. You got
Is
it?
it?
It's Shaq.
Okay.
He did it 3 times, including once with Orlando. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
During the big
That was
Orlando
the
run
Achilles heel, right? I think he struggled from the free throw line. He was just 2 of 12.
Yeah, I didn't look this
overall.
up, but he probably has the most free throws missed in the playoffs. He has to, right? Like that's you don't even have to look that up.
Yeah, the shots are just, flat. Like, whatever it is, whether it's he's too strong or he just doesn't have the right angle or he's too big, whatever excuse he's come up with over the years.
It got to the point where his wife couldn't watch.
Right.
You saw that during the broadcast. His wife literally
his
couldn't
ex-wife.
watch him take the free throws, and
Yep.
I'm with you. It kind of looks like he's trying to miss. It's so bad. It's the only explanation I have is he doesn't want to. It's his branding.
They're
I don't
line
know.
drive shots at the rim. Like,
He might as well just be taking one hand and just throwing a dart at the backboard, and he'd probably have a higher conversion rate. Bonus trivia. Ready? Since 2006, only 3 other players have attempted at least 220 free throws in a single postseason run. Who are they? Since 2006.
Giannis?
No, that's who I would have guessed too, but no.
Not LeBron.
Yes, LeBron in 2012. Yep.
Wow. Okay. I don't know who. I can't think of Allen Iverson. No, that's since 2006. That was before that. So no, I can't think of anybody else who was drawing fouls at that rate.
Dwight Howard, 2009.
Really?
Yeah, in
I forgot about
2009, and then this doesn't really count. I said since 2006. The wording was wrong. Dirk also that year. In 2005, 2006, Dirk was getting to the line a bunch.
Yeah, he was.
All right, what was your turning point of the game?
For me, it was that 7-0 run. I debated because the fourth quarter, like they were still down. They still had to come up with something there. But at least that 7-0 run didn't let things get out of hand. Like you could really easily point even to the Josh Howard mistake there because it felt like it was a really significant one. Like Avery Johnson was really frustrated. Johnson's in the huddle in between free throw. Josh Howard's in the huddle there, and he just looks despondent, like he realized he might have cost his team there. So that was a significant point as well. But I felt like that 7-0 run was so big because it just, again, Wade's feeling it now. He's like hits those 2 back-to-back jumpers that were incredible.
Yeah.
And then a Posey 3-pointer to cut the lead to 1, and it was just enough energy for the crowd to feed off of going into the fourth and everything else. And I think that's really what propelled him to take that superhuman leap in the fourth quarter.
That was my flashbulb moment. We can just go right into that. Those
fine.
back-to-back mid-range jumpers by Dwyane Wade. That was my flashbulb moment because it's not just the back-to-back mid-range jumpers, but then he, on the next possession following those 2 mid-range jumpers that he has just coming off of screens, has this crazy cross-court assist to James Posey for a 3-pointer, and that cut the lead to 1 with under a minute to go in the third quarter. And at that point, or right before that point, Dwyane Wade had not been shooting well.
No.
Everything was clanking off back iron. He wasn't feeling it.
20%, 3 of 15.
Yeah, 3 of 15. It looked like we were just sort of going in for a ho-hum Dwyane Wade performance, and for what would have ended up being a loss in this game. And the broadcast kept mentioning this, how it was basically just this overwhelming, like 18 out of 24 teams that had won Game 5 in a 2-2 series had gone on to win the final series. And so it kind of, you feel like, all right, whoever wins this, it's kind of their series to lose. And
sure.
Dwyane Wade, this is why it's, to me, the flashbulb moment. This is the thing that the all-time greats can do. It could just not be your day, right? You could have woke up a little too late. Maybe you were in too much traffic on the way down to the arena. Something's going on. You're not feeling it. Maybe your knee's bothering you more than it was before. Whatever the reason was. And he just found a way to sort of conjure the feeling, just conjure a flow, conjure the touch back. And he just comes off of a screen, hits one 18-foot jumper. Very next possession, comes off a screen, hits another 18-foot jumper, and he was just like, you know what? I have it now. I'm feeling it now. And it comes out of nowhere. And that's only something that I think the real greats of the greats can do.
Yeah, no doubt. It's so incredible to see this version of Dwyane. Like, I think a lot of Heat fans that started following the team back then, I think you've heard from a lot of fans. I think you even might be included in this. Like, you wouldn't be following Heat basketball if not for Dwyane Wade. And it's in moments like this where he became the greatest player in franchise history. And you kind of forget that because he took a backseat to LeBron even when he was still incredible. And of course, he had moments following 2014 and those runs to the finals where he was fantastic and great, but nothing where he was so dominant for this stretch. Like that fourth quarter was as good a stretch as you saw from any one player. Like, I mean, you hear about Steph Curry going on these runs and you've seen it time and time again, but that's with the 3-pointer. It's a little different, and not to take away anything from that at all, but it's not quite the same. Like this is just a combination.
Steph has never scored more than 17 points in a fourth quarter. Dwyane Wade scored. D Wade scored 17 in the fourth quarter. That doesn't include overtime. The most Steph has done in a fourth quarter was 17. LeBron too, by the way. LeBron too.
Yeah,
17.
I mean, it's an incredible performance. But LeBron also. But then you're talking about LeBron, who at 6'8" and 260 plus, a lot more dominant physically. Like this is just Dwyane being faster than everybody out there. They kept talking about Devin Harris, the young fella out there, trying to match with Wade as far as speed is concerned, and he's just like he can't respond. He can't get there quickly enough. Even the wily veteran Griffin just doesn't do it. And the shots,
everything they could at him. I mean, Devin Harris, I thought actually did a pretty okay job face guarding D Wade and sort of preventing the ball getting to D Wade for most of the game. But it's just great ones find a way to get it done.
Yeah, he did.
It sounds cliche. I know it does.
No, but that's exactly. But it's what we're talking about here. This is the moment. This is the game that transcends Dwyane into a whole other level, because the struggle is one thing. It's one half of really bad basketball, and then the recognition of saying, you know what, I still have an edge over everybody else, and I can still get this done. And that's exactly what happened next. It's like he just took over the game, which is what makes him a superstar.
Yeah, that's why my takeaway wasn't like this was not a masterpiece. If anything, the two previous games were masterpieces by Dwyane Wade. They looked prettier than this one. This one was not pretty at all, right? This was not the Thriller album of his NBA Finals. This was just sort of but it was the one when it's tough is when you be like you said, that when it's really when the going's tough and it's just not working and you make it work anyway. That's what makes you a legend. This was Tom Brady coming back against the Falcons in the Super Bowl. It didn't look pretty, but at the end of the day, you just get the job done. And it's something only the very few people can do. Do we have enough time? Let's just do our Bang and Brown moment really quick. I cut out a highlight from the broadcast here. Early in the game, I think it's the first quarter at this point, they're talking about how Pat Riley would cut up each of Dwyane Wade's Pat Riley wouldn't do it. But I love
Hubie's response. He's like, all right, let's play it because I'm curious to hear what you have clipped.
Before about how Wade uncomfortable with the Michael Jordan comparisons. It's nice to see Michael Jordan back in the NBA as now part owner of the Charlotte Bobcats, back where he belongs, Hubie.
Well, it would be interesting to see what happens there. They have a terrific young ball club. Bernie Bickerstaff has done an excellent job. Unfortunately for that franchise this year, they had so many injuries to quality players. They played you tough, but they would eventually run out of gas. But there is an awful lot of talent there, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years.
Let's go to Lisa Salters.
Well, Mike, after every game, Pat Riley sends a DVD to Dwyane Wade's house of all of his touches from that game. Wade told me that he usually spends hours watching it, trying to get better, as he says, just trying to be a student of the game. I asked Pat Riley how long he's been doing it, and he said, this year, he said, we've spent millions on our technical equipment. We might as well use it. Mike?
Just another sign.
You cut out the best part, because that was my Banger Brown moment, because then Hubie's like, oh, well, every franchise has this equipment nowadays. Right. It's like, he totally downplayed it. Like, there's this great moment of like, oh, you picture like the video coordinator, hours of work getting this DVD ready for Dwyane so he could watch it, pour over it, and like everybody's talking about that. Lisa Salter's reporting about this, and then Hubie's like, yeah, it gets done everywhere.
All the time. Who cares? Yeah,
it's hilarious.
I like the Charlotte Bobcats thing because it just sort of dates this whole thing. Like, Michael Jordan, welcome back to the league. The Bobcats, they have a nice young team. It's interesting to see what'll happen. Turns out nothing's going to happen for 16 years for Charlotte other than a name change and you get your jerseys back. That's the only thing that happens.
Bus City, baby. Yeah.
Michael Jordan, turns out he stinks at owning an NBA team. The other part that I liked was the fact that he sends a DVD to Dwyane Wade. Nowadays, obviously, like, you don't even get an email. Like, even if you were a player to get an email, that would be outdated, right? You just, at this point, you've got assistant coaches and scouting guys texting you highlights. Hey, I think you should do this or this or this. It's all on your phone, or they send it right to your iPad and you're watching it on the road,
Yeah.
on your way to a game now. Just the idea that Pat Riley would be like FedExing a DVD to Dwyane Wade's house, and then Dwyane Wade finding a DVD player to play it on seems outrageous.
I hate the idea of like the poor intern who has to like print the label to fit onto the CD just right. You don't want to put it over the hole in the middle. You got to start over from scratch. Horrible.
Make sure your handwriting's okay.
Yeah. Or if you print game 4 on there accidentally and now it's game 3 instead. Oh, you're going to go back and change it. Good time.
Confused. Like, we haven't played game 4 yet. How do you have this information?
It's the future. Yeah.
We'll get into a few more categories, including our big what if of game 5 coming up next here on Locked On Heat. All right, back here with Locked On Heat, continuing along with our rewatch of the 2006 NBA Finals. Game 5, we already heard from Erik Spoelstra. We've talked a lot about free throws, Dwyane Wade, and the like. Let's get to our biggest what if from the game, David. This is the one that you requested. You requested to have this category, so I'm interested to see where you take this.
Well, it's just I had totally forgotten about the Stackhouse ejection, the suspension, excuse me, and that it really everybody stepped up, and you wonder who would have gotten those shots if Stackhouse had been out there. Maybe you don't rely on Nowitzki as much. Maybe it takes a little pressure off Dirk where he can get his shot going from the field. Howard had to step up. Terry had a huge game with 35 points. So you wonder whether or not that distribution of shots would have worked out the way it did. But Stackhouse had been so good, very, very good in the first 2 games of the series, and completely out of it. Obviously because of the flagrant foul from game 4. So if he had been out in the game, would they have won it? Would they have won it a little bit more convincingly? Would they have been able to? Would Miami have been able to find a way to come back? And so that's, to me, a huge what if that I'm sure a lot of Mavericks fans are pretty upset about.
Marquise Daniels did a nice job filling in.
Yep.
But he scored 5 points on 2 of 3 shots. He was not at that point at his career. He was a little young, and he was not ready, I think, to be taking a bunch of shots in the NBA Finals as sort of a sub for a guy who was supposed to be playing, like you said, Stackhouse, who got suspended for that game. Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I found myself wondering sort of the same thing. The way that Golden State Warriors fans will talk about Draymond Green's ejection in 2016. Now, the Stackhouse thing is not nearly that level, right? Like, Draymond was obviously one of Golden State's best players, but in this series, Stackhouse was probably one of Dallas's 3 best players, and so I think it's definitely fair. I mean, first of all, I don't think that getting the suspension, I don't think was all that debatable the way that the Draymond Green one was, but it's an interesting what if. Mine was, what if the Heat had gone small more often later in the game? They take, the whole hack-a-shack thing really did sort of derail their offense late in that fourth quarter. And it was like 2 minutes and 40-something seconds left, I think, in the game. And Pat Riley's like, enough with this hack-a-shack thing. We got to get into some sort of offensive flow. And he yanks him from the game for about a minute and a half or so. And immediately, as soon as Shaq comes out of the game, Dwyane Wade they go small. Udonis Haslem and Antoine Walker in the front court. They're spacing the floor a little bit, not to today's standards, but to the 2006 standards they were. And Dwyane Wade just gets right to the basket. 2 straight possessions. And all of a sudden, Miami is back on an offensive flow. And then it gets back to under a minute left when the hacker rules don't really benefit the team doing the hacking. And so they bring Shaq back in, and whatever. The Heat end up winning the game. But I couldn't help but think, watching it, it was so obvious. And I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking here, and I have the benefit of 16 years of NBA history going for me here. But it was just so blatantly obvious that Dwyane Wade needed a little bit more space.
Right.
And I understand Shaq was the second best player on the team, and it was Shaquille O'Neal. But, yeah, they probably should have been playing way more minutes with Shaq off the floor and Dwyane Wade on the floor, staggering them a little bit more. And with no Zoe, just no center. Just to let today, if you had a player like D. Wade, you would be opening up the floor for him all the time. High screen and roll, a pick and pop style center, get to the basket. That's what you would be doing.
Yeah. Shout out to Pat Riley, too, for recognizing that Gary Payton had it going. This is the importance of having a veteran. They showed that the graphic there at one point, I think in the fourth quarter, maybe it was overtime, about most games played without a championship ring. And Karl Malone, obviously, I think has that record still. But Gary Payton, I think, was the 3rd most at that point after having gone to the finals with the Seattle Supersonics, having played with the Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks for a stretch too, and of course the Lakers in the finals when they fell short to the Detroit Pistons. So just never having been able to get it done. And another thing I didn't recognize either, I didn't remember this at all. This is something that Peyton spoke about actually on the Draymond Green podcast at one point, talking about how he's the one who pleaded to Shaquille O'Neal to recognize that this was Dwyane's team and to defer to him at some point during the regular season, not just during the playoffs, but during the regular season. So that was something. I guess Peyton had a lot more veteran presence there, just by virtue of, well, you're not going to shut him up, obviously, but he's going to have his opinions. He's going to let you know about him. But he backed up whatever opinions he might have had with strong play, especially late in the game.
Where does this game rank series? I've got a hot take here, but I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize this was hot takeable here, but yeah, it's the best game so far. Overtime thriller, big shots from both teams. Like, I mean, it's lost in the annals of history here, but Dirk had some big shots there, necessitating Dwyane to hit both of those free throws.
Dirk with that patented one-legged fadeaway on the baseline there in overtime. It was a crazy shot. That was a crazy shot. It's probably the best shot of the series, like the best single shot of the series.
What's your hot take?
It's not better than Game 3, the comeback. To me, the whatever it was, the 13-point comeback, 15-point comeback.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was better. It wasn't as good as Game 4.
Oh,
to me, this was the third best game of the series.
Wow.
Me,
I think this was both teams playing their best. Like, this was really, really good Dallas and really good Miami basketball. Like, I mean, there were ugly stretches there early on, but the energy level was higher.
The energy level was higher. It felt like this was a classic Game 5 in a playoff series where both teams had settled in, they had made their adjustments, and it was just, okay, we know what you are, you know what we are, we're just going head-to-head. And from an intensity scale, I agree 100% with you. But this game was kind of boring. Like, there was so many, for most of the game, I would say 85% of the game, basically until the middle of the fourth quarter where stuff started going back and forth a little bit. It was just a lot of free throws, man. It was just so many free throws. Not just Miami took 49, but Dallas also took 25, which is still a fair amount. It felt like every time I looked up, somebody else was at the line. I was like, this game is kind of boring. I gotta be honest. The end and the overtime and all that kind of stuff. This is why I said at the top of the show, this game was a little bit different than I remembered. I remember at the time watching this and, edge of your seat. I can't believe this. Instant classic, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it is, and I still believe it is a signature game in the series, but watching it, I did not have as much fun watching the full game as much as I did Games 3 and Game 4. There was just a little bit more of a smoothness to those games than this one where Miami took 49 free throws.
I guess so. I could see that point. I don't know. I didn't feel the same way because I just think that the free throws were kind of like a needed break too, because the intensity was so high throughout. Like the gameplay, where I think was just better in this game than it had been at any point throughout the series.
The Mark Cuban angry scale, we go from 1 to 5. Last time it was at a 3.5, I believe. Yeah. Where are we at now?
I've got to put him at a 4. A lot more animated out there on the sideline, frustrated, clearly, not just kind of nervous about the change of the game, but again, I mean, to have the Heat come back late in the game like this and to have those clutch shots, he was so excited about Dirk's shot, and then to see it all fall through his fingers there. I wish they had panned to him during the Howard timeout. That was a big mistake there. I wonder how he responded to it, whether he was trying to issue words of encouragement or he was like, oh, you're on the trading block, thanks a lot. And curious to hear how he responded.
He woke up that morning choosing violence. He shows up to the arena wearing a Jerry Stackhouse jersey, right? And so
in support of his guy.
In support of his guy who was suspended for that game. But I just I had it at a 4.3. Yeah. There was a few times where they'd pan to him when D Wade was at the free throw line and he was clearly not happy about it, wondering why they were getting so many calls. After the game, he actually tells ESPN, I couldn't care less about the timeout. That's not the issue. In response to a question about the Howard timeout there at the end of overtime, he was upset about the free throw disparity. And this is where that narrative starts to get its carry. The wind in the sails of this narrative, that narrative comes from this game. And Mark Cuban to this day is still upset with the free throw disparity. And it really did start in this game. So, yeah, I've got it at a 4.3.
Maybe they shouldn't initiate Hack and Shack then, because, I mean, he went to the line 12 times. So it's not like – yeah, I know Dwyane got to the line a lot, but I mean, again, we were watching this, and again, maybe it's hindsight at the moment. I didn't certainly think that there was an egregious call or anything like that, but he was just clearly more physical and faster than everybody else, and that's why they were fouling him. So we'll see how it plays out in Game 6.
Has Dwyane Wade achieved legendary status yet? It's our final category.
I think so.
It's an emphatic yes.
So
it's done.
Emphatic? I'm still kind
It's
of
there.
like, I think legendary kind of connotes having accomplished something, and he's not there yet, but he's still like carried the team. He turned things around mid-game. Certainly a legendary individual performance, but now he's strung together a few of those. So we're starting to get there. I just don't know if for some reason, if he had gotten hurt after Game 5, would you still remember him as a legend? Probably not. But the fact that he was able to close out the series and accomplish what he did to single-handedly take on the Dallas Mavericks and beat them at their own game, I think that's what kind of propelled him. But yes, starting to see it. I think by now we've already started to see the commentary too about Dwyane Wade time. Like the expectation is that Wade's going to put on a show, one of the bright young stars of our league, as Mike Breen said. So I think
the Michael Jordan
certainly
comparisons are incessant and unending in this entire series. It's getting to the point where then the broadcast, having made so many of the comparisons, are now a talking point for this broadcast now is how Dwyane Wade is sick of the comparisons. And the broadcast starts discussing why Dwyane Wade is sick of the comparisons. I'm like, broadcast, you're the reason that you're making the comparisons here. So it's kind of like a little vicious circle for them. But anyway, you're probably right. Like if they go on and lose this series, do we remember Dwyane Wade in the same way? No, absolutely not. I think,
is Jimmy Butler after like the bubble finals, like and even the last playoff run, is he viewed as a legendary player?
I think that performance is viewed as legendary. It's
right.
Like the ultimate like martyr performance, and I think that's probably where Dwyane Wade. That's the same space he occupies if Miami loses this series. That's a really good comparison. Yeah. But had Jimmy Butler gone on and won and beat LA, like now he's on maybe not Dwyane Wade's level all time, but the performance is viewed similarly, I think, to the 2006 one. I have it as a yes. I have it marked down as a yes. He's already done it. That was my answer coming in, but I think you've convinced me otherwise. I think he's just right there. He is right there. It's legendary, but not as legendary as it's going to be. Right?
Yeah.
There's different scales of legends. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that'll do it for our 2006 NBA Finals rewatch of Game 5. Game 6 will be coming later next week. You can find our interview with Antoine Walker about this season, about what he thinks about the current Miami Heat. That is up on YouTube and in your podcast feed. If you're a Heat fan, you're not going to want to miss that. But we'll be back next week. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for joining me, David.
You got it, Wes.